Hi folks, I'm Mark Hasiuk. You're watching The Mark Hasiuk Show on Roadkill Radio. For decades, government has dumped billions into Vancouver's downtown east side, a neighborhood that stands alone in the Canadian experience. And by most accounts, things have gotten worse. Tonight's guest is a longtime advocate. Dave Diewert leads Streams of Justice, a Christian social justice group aimed at poverty and homelessness. He's a member of the Downtown East Side Neighborhood Council and a lecturer at Regent College, a graduate school of Christian studies here in Vancouver. Check out his website at streamsofjustice.org for news and info. Mr. Diewert, welcome.
Thank you.
Now, for folks watching outside, from outside Vancouver, who don't know about the downtown east side, it's a relatively small area here in Vancouver, and it is awash in drugs and poverty and prostitution and crime, and it's a very sad place. Now, I'm a simple man. I just want to know what you, Mr. Diewert, if elected mayor or premier or crowned king, what would you do right now in the downtown east side to make things better? Do you have a couple of ideas you could just start us off with?
Well, I think the first thing that I'd say is that being elected mayor or premier, etc., is not probably a route that would be very beneficial, because it reinforces a kind of structure of hierarchy that has been part of the big problem, I think, in the downtown east side. That is, agencies, governments, nonprofits that come in and think they know what's best, and set up programs, control people's lives, and do very little in terms of supporting initiatives that come from the grassroots, that come from the people themselves. Because fundamentally, they don't believe that the people in the downtown east side know what is best for them. They believe that they have all the answers, that the expertise is on their side. And I think this is a big part of the problem today.
Well, I'm on board with you there. I agree with that completely. This is a policy problem. It's not, as everyone contends, or as most people contend, strictly a poverty problem, because there's poverty from coast to coast in Canada, yet we don't have downtown east sides in other cities, and we have to ask ourselves why that is. Now, I want to talk about... Can I
interrupt you for a second? I mean, it is a poverty problem. It's a problem of inequality. It's the problem that the resources that are earmarked for that community don't get down to the people. Mm-hmm. And I think that the problem of inequality is a significant problem, and the problem of poverty is a significant problem. And it's tied to the way in which policies are formulated. For example, policies around welfare rates, policies around housing, policies of all kinds that affect poor people. And because the distribution of resources is not done in a way that supports their lives, and so their lives become very strained, very pressured, very difficult. And that's what people most often see. So the idea that all we have down there, or primarily what we have down there, is a population of like drug addicts and prostitutes and so on, is a misperception. What we have is a community of poor people, and the poverty is a result of larger structures that have been at work, whether it's the colonialism of the Canadian state that has dispossessed people from their lands and traditions, and the fallout of residential schools, or whether it's policies of capitalism that keep favoring the wealthy and make it very difficult for low-income people to survive in this kind of competitive culture. So I think that I think poverty is an issue. And,
poverty is definitely an issue, and you talked about the resources that are being put into the neighborhood. I'm of the mind that many of those resources are the problem because they're being concentrated in an area and courting dependence, not from around the city, not only from around the province, but across Canada. And I want to read for everyone something. It was a 2011 report entitled "The Downtown East Side, a Community in Need of Balance." And it was compiled by the Strathcona Business Improvement Association, which is right down there by the downtown east side, the Raycam Community Association, and something called the Inner City Safety Society. And what they state in this report, and I quote now, maintaining the downtown east side as a high or special needs social housing enclave will not help to stabilize either the community or the city as a whole. Continued expansion or concentration of vulnerable individuals into already adverse social conditions will lead to neither their safety and health nor that of the neighborhood. So again, I'm a simple man, but that breaks it down pretty clear for me that if you pack a neighborhood full of people who have problems, who are mentally ill, who have addiction problems, into a few square blocks, you really make things worse for everybody. And the only people that benefit from that, Mr. Diewert, are the predators in the neighborhood, and they are there. So what do you say to that claim?
Well, I completely disagree. First of all, because I think that this report comes out of a certain perspective on the downtown east side that is one. I mean, the BIA is a business group. They're interested in securing the area for the benefit of business, and so I'm not entirely convinced that this report necessarily reflects the view of the people. I think this is a real community, a community that has a whole new, an alternative economic strategy of support, people supporting one another on a daily basis to survive. And what they need is housing. They need absolutely good, solid, dignified housing to stabilize their lives.
There's more housing than they need right now. There are empty rooms in the downtown east side.
Empty rooms?
Absolutely. I've seen them. But I want to get back to the philosophy here for a second, because I want to pull something off your website, Streams of Justice, and you tell me if you did not write this, because I don't think that you and I are too far apart here. In 2009, on your website, I believe, unless someone is plagiarizing or putting something else on there, you wrote, I suspect that we are guilty of a good deal of well-meaning but misguided assistance very often, and we align ourselves with systems of assistance that actually turn out to be oppressive and demoralizing. Did you write that? And if so, what do you mean? Because it sounds like it's what I'm talking about.
No, I don't think it's what you're talking about. What I'm saying, I don't know if I wrote it. I don't remember writing that.
Do you agree with that?
Well, in the sense that the systems, whether it's the social assistance system or the health system or the criminal justice system, I mean, these are oppressive systems that keep people down. They don't support people. They don't give people the voice to say what they want in their own neighborhood and how they want to improve their own neighborhood. I mean, look, the Carnegie Community Action Project did a visioning process that took 2 years, and then they interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people down there, and out of that came a vision document. And the vision document said that 90% of the people interviewed said, we want to live in this neighborhood. We think this is a community of support. We like this community, but we need things like housing to sustain our lives. If we had good, decent housing, we would want to stay here. I think there's a great deal of community solidarity and support, and I think there's a lot for us to learn from that community about elements of support. And I think what we need to do is support the grassroots perspective of what they need for their neighborhood. Instead of coming down with reports from BIAs and so on and saying what we need is social mix, the community is not saying what they need is social mix. The community of low-income people, they're saying what we need is good housing, what we need are amenities that support our lives, and so on. And
okay, but you create a culture of dependency. Our guest is Dave Diewert. He's an advocate and a lecturer at Regent College. Check out his website at streamsofjustice.org for news and info. Mr. Diewert, I want to read something else to you. Now, according to the city's homeless count, the number of homeless people in Vancouver, that's in shelters and on the street, has increased steadily over the past decade. A total of 628 homeless people were counted in 2002. That number reached 1,715 in 2010. This year's overall homeless population is about 1,600. But the number of people sleeping on the street in Vancouver, which is the key number for me, nearly doubled in 2012 from 154 to 306. Yet that has happened while we're creating this social housing enclave in the downtown east side, which means we're courting...
Well, tell me the social housing enclave we're creating in the downtown east side. There hasn't been hardly any social housing built there in the last, decade. You can't be serious. What they did with that...
Wait a second. They're renovating hotels all the time.
Renovating hotels is not new social housing. I hate to break it to you, but hotels are not new social housing. Those are renovated 10 by 10 rooms with a new paint job.
Yeah.
That is not the social housing.
So what's your vision?
What I'm talking about is this. The reason that report, the street homelessness doubled, has everything to do with the fact that they brought in a bunch of heat shelters a couple of years ago. So they took homeless people off the street and put them inside shelters. Shelters are not the solution to homelessness. Those are still homeless people inside the shelters. They still count them on the homeless count. But what happened is that they then canceled the heat shelters, and so everybody ends up back out on the street.
Why are people coming? Why are people coming to the neighborhood?
Homelessness count.
Why are people coming to the neighborhood?
Because they're not building any social housing.
Mr. Diewert, why are people coming to the neighborhood? People are coming into the neighborhood. Why?
Well, I think because, among other things, it's a place of acceptance.
Yeah.
If you go to
that may be part of it. I tell you why they're coming there. Because that's where the housing is, and that's where the so-called services are. So you're courting dependence into and creating this dysfunctional quagmire, and you're not helping a lot of people that way. Listen, I'm not casting...
Of the 14 sites of social housing that the city and the province are putting together, tell me of those 14 sites, how many are in the downtown east side?
I believe 7.
They're not 7.
Yes,
they're not 7.
Well, the exact number escapes me. If you're going to argue that social housing does not comprise the bulk of housing in the downtown east side, I don't know what you're talking about. That's what it all is, and that's part of the problem. Now, you've been talking a lot about oppression here. Are people in the downtown east side oppressed?
Yes, they are.
By whom? Who's doing the oppressing?
Well, why don't you ask them, for one?
Okay, well, I'll ask you, because they're not here right now.
I would say it's the police.
The police.
I would say it's the social services. I would say it's the way in which the health is being distributed down there. In many cases, people's lives are managed by these massive government institutions that dictate where they can stay, where they can live, where they can sit, where they can sell their wares or not sell their wares. I mean, tell me this.
You're talking about breaking bylaws there. Listen, if you are dependent of this...
Talk about breaking bylaws?
If you are a dependent of the state, yes, there are going to be some things you're not going to like about that. So the best way to remove yourself from that situation is to not be dependent on the state.
The owner of London Drugs, or Cam Watts, who owns the Kiefer and got a 10-year tax break from the city. Now tell me that's not corporate welfare. I mean, who's dependent on the state here? Plus, you have George Woolsey, who in 2 hotel rooms has 241 bylaw violations and was never charged a fine for those, whereas people that vend on the street get a $175 ticket, and if they don't pay it, there's a warrant out for their arrest.
Well, if you want to go on a hunt for scumbag slumlords, I'm right with you. But I gotta be honest with you. As long as you keep creating a social housing enclave in the downtown east side, those are the people that you're going to attract. So if you want to get rid of some of those guys, you got to smash up some of the social housing enterprise.
No, we have to build real social housing. You know, like social housing with self-contained suites that give people dignity, not the 10 by 10 rooms run by these private owners and slumlords. Okay. No, and even the city, even the province and their hotels that they own, these are still 10 by 10 rooms. These were meant as temporary shelters. By the UN definition, people in 10 by 10 SRO rooms are homeless because these were not ever meant to be permanent structures. So I would say that by the city's own housing plan of 2005, 5,000 privately owned SRO rooms need to be replaced by good social housing. That's
right. But Dave, that plan that you cited calls for a mix of...
Until the city complies with its own housing plan and replaces those SROs with really good social housing, then we're not talking about a social housing enclave. We're talking about warehousing people in inadequate housing that creates all kinds of problems in terms of exacerbating their own mental health situations and so on and so on. Okay. So this is not a big enclave of great social housing. This is a bunch of SROs that are horrible to live in.
Yeah. Okay, let's get off housing for a second. Our guest is Dave Diewert. He's a lecturer at Regent College. He's an advocate. Last May, I wrote a column about the Vancouver area network of drug users.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, and Dave, you called that column, and I quote, a toxic, hateful piece of journalism, and you said I hold drug users, I quote, in utter contempt. Now, before you respond, I want to read something to our viewers and our listeners. This is right from VANDU, that's the acronym, VANDU's website. From their manifesto for a drug user liberation movement, it says folks have a, quote, right to obtain, prepare, and ingest drugs and to be intoxicated on drugs. It continues, quote, we might take drugs to deal with psychological trauma or physical pain or for pleasure or fun. Now, VANDU claims to counsel addicts. Mr. Diewert, my question to you is, do you think that's the right message to send to people who are killing themselves with drugs? That, oh, you can take it for fun if you want.
Well, I think the way in which VANDU operates is quite remarkable. I mean, it gives drug users a voice, and it gives them a place of belonging and inclusion and participation.
Yeah.
It supports them in advocating safety in the way in which they use their drugs. I think whereas other people would like to see them all, just be carted off and die, yeah. I think they've resisted.
Because that's what I want. I want them all carted off to die. But can you answer my original question? Do you think that that's the right message to send to someone who's in the throes of addiction, who has most likely a tragic history of abuse and neglect, that it's okay, you can continue to take drugs because it's fun?
Well, I think what they're saying is that we're a very curious society in the sense that some drugs are legal and some drugs aren't. I mean, you might take, or someone might take some alcohol for fun, and that would be completely okay. We could see that as completely okay.
Right.
But for some reason, there are certain drugs that if you take, you're criminalized. And that is a whole broader...
I know that you're on the downtown east side because I'm down there a lot too, and I've seen you. Now, are you going to tell me that 20-year-old Aboriginal woman who's shivering on the sidewalk because she's addicted to crack, she's having fun? What in God's name are you talking about?
I don't think anyone's saying that.
Well, comparing her to me drinking a couple of Moosehead every night?
I'm not saying that. You're saying it's impossible to take illicit drugs for fun.
I didn't say that.
Yeah,
no, I did not. I did not say that at all. I'm asking you if you think that's the right message to counsel someone who's in the throes of addiction. And that's what VANDU does. And we pay for it. I want to tell the folks that we pay for it.
You don't know anything about VANDU. Because they do not...
This is right from their website, Mr. Diewert.
They do not counsel
copy and pasted.
Who are 20-year-old Indigenous women on the street taking cocaine to have fun. What they're saying is you are worth something, you belong, and that worth is not tied to you being abstinent or in a program of abstinence. Your worth is as a human being, and we're going to embrace you, and we're going to offer support and services for you, and we're going to be with you in this journey that you're on. That's exactly the way they say it.
Right.
That's how they operate on a day-by-day basis. I've seen it. I was involved with VANDU from the very first day that they even formed. So this is ridiculous. If you think that this is the message they're sending out, they're not.
All I've done is copy and paste from their website.
Into the way in which they operate on a day-by-day basis.
Yeah, and we, the taxpayers of British Columbia, pay this organization $250,000 every year. City Hall gives them $20,000 a year. Wouldn't it be best to put that? Wouldn't it be best?
Give them $20,000 a year for?
Wouldn't it be best to put that money towards prevention and treatment?
No, look at. There's a whole range of options in dealing with drugs and addiction in our culture. There's a whole range of things, and not all of it has to be in zero tolerance treatment programs.
Yeah.
I mean, there can be a place in which you simply help people who are addicted, who are not ready yet to get off,
right,
and so on, to just be safe, to have a place of belonging, to have a place that they can meaningfully participate, that takes the conditions of their lives seriously and tries to offer some kind of support and help.
Right.
And this is what VANDU does all the way, has done all the way through their history and advocated for changes in structures, social structures, and legal structures that are making life even more hellish for them. And some of those structures are the structures of prohibition and the war on drugs, which is making their lives even more hell than it would be otherwise.
Well, listen, it's not just me. It's just not just me who opposes Van Doo. There's a lot of people in the downtown east side who I disagree with on a lot of things, who don't want anything to do with Van Doo because they demonize people. They throw elbows around the neighborhood. And quite frankly, I'm a little surprised at you, Mr. Diewert, that you would use the same type of, how can you claim to want to foster a dialogue between the more affluent and the poor in our society, yet, you get to somebody like me, I disagree with you, and you call me a bunch of names. It seems beneath you, actually. You're a lecturer at Regent College. You should demonstrate a little more intellectual rigor. I don't want poor people or drug dealers carted away to die in the neighborhood. That's ridiculous for you to say that.
I didn't say you did.
Oh, I'm sorry. I heard it about 5 minutes ago.
No, I didn't say you did. I said there are people who want people carted away. I've heard people call in on talk shows who said they should just take them out into the valley and let them infect themselves to death. I've heard that.
Okay, well, there's nuts everywhere, okay?
I'm not saying you. I'm saying there are people who think this is the way to clean them up.
Well.
Just get rid of them.
Well,
move them out in cattle trains.
Well,
I've heard that said. I'm not saying you said it. I'm not calling you any names. I'm just saying there's a sentiment out there that has absolutely zero tolerance for illicit drug users. And I think this is hugely problematic.
Okay, well, what is hugely problematic is what has been happening the last 20 years in that neighborhood. It's not getting any better. And yes, there are great people in the neighborhood. I have a lot of friends, many who are addicted in the neighborhood, and I know there's beautiful relationships that develop on those streets. But what is working is not sustainable. And hopefully we can have these conversations without demonization. Mr. Diewert, thanks so much for coming on and taking the fire. We really appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Mark.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Very interesting topic. Don't take my word for it, folks. Just go online and check things out. And go check out Mr. Diewert's website at streamsofjustice.org. He's an interesting guy. I don't doubt his sincerity. He's a good Christian fellow, but I think he's wrong on a lot of things. But everybody's got their own opinion. I'm Mark Hasiuk. You've been watching The Mark Hasiuk Show on Roadkill Radio. Good luck. God bless. We'll see you next time.